All right, so we were done with our indifference curve and budget line and all that. Now we are starting, and we were done with our equilibrium as well. So now we are starting with our new topic, that is price consumption curve. Now we are left with three concepts in theory of demand. And the major concept is income and substitution effect that we will learn tomorrow in the next class. Now for today, we are focusing on price consumption curve. Now what you need to understand is that price consumption curve is not something that you will draw in your P4 exam. We are learning price consumption curve and another concept that is known as income consumption curve to reach to a final diagram of income and substitution effect. So this diagram and the next one that we will learn, you will not draw these diagrams in your P4 exam. Now coming towards price consumption curve. Coming towards price consumption curve. Now, for example, let's say that my income is, let's say, 1000. My income is 1000. All right. And I am distributing, allocating my income within good Y and good X. I have allocated $500 for good Y. All right. And $500 for good X. Let's say the price of good Y is, let's say, $100. All right. The price of good Y is $100. And the price of good X is also, let's say, $100. Price is $100, assuming. Now this means that I can buy 5 units of good Y, 5 units of good Y, and 5 units of good X. All right. Now let me draw a budget line here as well. This is my good Y. This is my good X. And this is the amount of good Y and good X which I can buy with the income of $1,000 while my price level for good Y and good X is $100. All right. So I'm operating at AB. My budget line right now is AB. And the slope of budget line, what is the slope of my budget line? Slope of budget line is PX over PY. All right. PX over PY. This is the current slope of my budget line. Now, let's say the price of good X falls. Price of good X falls. And it falls from $100 to $50. Now, the new price level, new price for good X is, let's say, $50. Now the allocation of income is still the same, $500 for good Y and $500 for good X. But the price level for good Y is same, that is $100, same price, that is $100. But for good X, the price level is falling, and it is falling from $100 to $50 now. So what does this mean? This means that according to the current allocation of my income, I can buy 10 units. Oh, sorry, I can buy 5 units of good Y, which is the same amount, 5 units of good Y. But as for good X, because the price level is less now, I can buy more units of good X, which means that I can buy 10 units of good X now. All right. Because the price level for good X is falling. Now, if the price level for good X is falling, this means that my real income or my purchasing power for good X is rising. My purchasing power for good X is rising, right? The purchasing power for good Y is the same, but my purchasing power for good X is rising, which means that my budget line needs to come forward for good X because I can now afford more of good X at the same income level. So my budget line will tilt rightwards from AB to AC. It will tilt rightwards from AB to AC. Now, what about the slope of budget line? New slope of budget line. As you can see that my Y is still the same, but my X is changing. This means that the slope of budget line specifically for good X is changing. So I have to represent it with a new variable and I have to explain it to the examiner that the slope of budget line for good X is changing while the slope of budget line for good Y is still the same. So my slope of budget line will change from Px over Py to Px1 over Py or Px2 over Py, whatever you want to write. Px1 over Py or Px2 over Py or Px3 over Py. It's your choice. Now this one is representing the change in budget line that is occurring due to decrease in price level for good X. Everything clear up till now? So you need to learn this point that if there is a change in price of one unit only, of one good only, for good Y or good X, if there is a change in price for one specific good only, your budget line will always tilt, keeping the other one constant. The Y is constant. Keeping the other one constant, if there is a change in the price of one good only, your budget line will tilt, right? Rightwards or leftwards, that's a different story. Now, if there is a decrease in price level, remember my words. Whenever there is a decrease in price level, your budget line will always tilt to the right. Your budget line will always tilt to the right, regardless of what kind of good we're talking about, regardless of the nature of that good, the color of that good, race of that good, it doesn't matter. Whenever there is a decrease in price level, whenever there's a decrease in price level, your budget line will always tilt to the right. Now, this is fatwa. This is fatwa, right? So, whenever there is a decrease in price, budget line will always tilt to the right. Clear? Because there is a confusing good that we will learn later on. So that is why I'm telling you this fatwa right now, that it will always tilt to the right, doesn't matter the nature of that good. All right, now let's move forward. Now we are talking about normal good. Now this normal, by this normal I mean normal demand curve. Normal demand, which states that there is a negative relationship between price and quantity demand. If the price level of a good falls, quantity demand of that good will rise. All right. Now, this is the basic law that we are talking about, and we are drawing the diagram of decrease in price level, that the price level is falling. Now, how will this be shown in price consumption curve? Now, first, let me tell you the fatwa, the basic fatwa, and then we will move on with the diagram. Now, we have to show the derivation, good Y, good X. All right. Price of good X and quantity of good X. All right. Now, this is your initial budget line AB. All right, AB. And this is your initial indifference curve that you will draw in the middle. Keep it in the center. IC. This is your initial equilibrium E. And this is the initial equilibrium quantity for good X, that is X. All right. Now, as there is a decrease in price level of good X, as there is a decrease in price level, decrease in price of good X. All right. Now, as there is a decrease in price level of good X, regardless of the nature of good, the color of good, the overall characteristic of a good, it doesn't matter. Whenever there's a price, whenever there's a fall in the price of good X, your purchasing power for good X will rise. So, keeping good Y constant, your budget line will tilt to the right from AB to AC, representing an increase in the purchasing power for good X, and the slope of budget line, will shift from Px over Py to Px1 over Py. Everything clear? Everything clear? Now this is the fatwa diagram. This is the fatwa diagram. Whenever there is a decrease in price, your diagram will be the same until this point. All right. I'm copying this fatwa and I will complete the diagram here. All right. So we are talking about a decrease in price level. We're talking about decrease in price level, and we're talking about normal demand curve. And the law of normal demand curve is that whenever there is a fall in price level, the quantity demand for that good will rise. If I'm operating at point X, if I'm operating at point X, so to represent an increase in demand, my new equilibrium will be after this point so that I can show that my demand level is rising, my quantity demand is extending. So my new equilibrium will be something like this, parallel to the old equilibrium. IC1, equilibrium E1, and I am consuming more of good X due to decrease in price level. I have reached to X1 and X1. All right. And then I will draw the basic normal demand curve, downward sloping demand curve like this, D. All right. Normal demand curve. Now, because X was my first quantity, and my first quantity is intersecting my demand curve over here, this means that my first equilibrium position was this and my first price level was this. All right, this was my first price level. Now my second quantity is intersecting over here, E1, which means that my new price level is P1, and now our diagram is complete, that due to decrease in price level I'm able to afford more of good X and I'll buy more good X, which means that there will be an extension in quantity demand from X to X1. Everything clear? Right. And one more thing, don't draw the equilibrium too much below the previous equilibrium. Just try to keep it in a parallel position. All right. Now I'm giving you a minute to read the explanation. I'm giving you a minute to read the explanation and see how I have explained this diagram. It's very important to highlight the key points in the diagram. All right. Done. All right. Now, let's move to another good, which is a bit different than the theory that we just learned right now. The other one is known as Giffen good. Now, what is Giffen good? See, Giffen good is a good which is very inferior, very low quality, and very necessity in nature. Now, Giffen good is more inferior than inferior good itself. You must have studied income elasticity of demand back in your AS, and you must have studied about inferior good, which is a low quality good. Now, the given good is more inferior than the inferior good itself, and it is more necessity than the normal inferior good that we learn in income elasticity of demand. All right. Now, given good is a good which has proven the law of demand incorrect. Now, according to Giffen good says that there is a positive relationship between price and quantity demand. Now, if the price level of a certain good rises, the quantity demand for that good will rise, which means that Giffen good is proving a positive relationship between price and demand. Now, how is this possible? Let's understand this with a diagram. For example, let's say my income is $100, all right, and I have two options, either to buy meat or either to buy bread, all right. So I have allocated $50 over here and $50 over here. I've allocated my income accordingly, equally. Now, let's assume the price level of meat is $50. The price of meat is $50 and price of bread is $10. Right? Now, according to the allocation of income, I am able to buy 1 unit of meat and 5 units of bread. Now, assuming I'm a very poor guy, right? And bread is also my food for once a day. All right, the bread is all it also fills my stomach one time a day, and meat also finishes my hunger one time a day. So according to the utility theory, because if I consume bread again and again and again, my marginal utility will fall. So that, keeping that in mind, what I'm doing is that I am eating bread once or twice a day, and then I go to meat. I eat meat, then I come back, and then I eat bread once or twice a day again. So keeping my utility balanced. So what am I doing? I am consuming 1 unit of meat and 5 units of bread. All right. Now let's say the price level of bread increases. The price of bread increases, and it increases from $10 to $15, and the price level is rising. Now, because I am such a poor guy and bread is my one time meal in a day, right? So, again, bread is my priority because it is still cheaper than meat, and it is, filling up my hunger. So, previously, when I was consuming 5 units of bread, when the price level was 10, now the same 5 units of bread will cost me how much? They will cost me $75. The same 5 units of bread will cost me $75. All right. And because my income is only 100, I am left with $25 only. Okay. Now I am left with $25 and the price of meat is $50. The price of meat is $50, right? So am I able to afford meat anymore? No. But I can afford bread, another unit of bread. So what will I do? I will buy another unit of bread for $15, and which means that I am now consuming 6 units of bread. I am now consuming 6 units of bread. Previously, I was consuming 5 units of bread, and now I'm consuming 6 units of bread, which means that it shows that as your price level increases, the quantity demand for given good is rising. Everything clear? Okay, now let's draw the diagram. Now there is a case that your price level is falling. Price level is falling, and the examiner has asked you to draw the diagram for given good. Now, if the price level, if there's a positive relationship between price and given good, so when my price level is rising, my quantity demand for given good is rising. But if my price level falls, the quantity demand for given good will fall as well, proving a positive relationship, right? Now, let's draw the diagram. We will draw the fatwa first. This is my good Y and this is my good X. This is price of good X and quantity of good X. Now, your first step is to show the initial equilibrium, initial indifference curve and budget line. So initially you're operating at AB. All right. Initially you are operating at AB. And this is supposed to be your indifference curve that is in the middle, IC, equilibrium E. And this is your current equilibrium quantity X and X. All right. X and X. Now, Devansh, tell me one thing. If there is a positive relationship between price and given good, and in this case your price is falling, which means that the quantity consumption for given good will fall as well. So where should your budget line tilt? Rightwards or leftwards? Over here or over here? Where should your budget line tilt towards? Rightwards or leftwards? Why leftwards? Why leftwards? It should tilt rightwards. Very good. Because I told you earlier, it doesn't matter which kind of good we are talking about. The nature of that good, the color of that good, it doesn't matter. Whenever there is a fall in the price level for good X, your budget line will always tilt to the right. Why? Because your budget line is telling you about your purchasing power. If my price level is falling, my demand for given good will fall. That is the nature of given good. That is completely fine. But it has nothing to do with my purchasing power. It has nothing to do with my purchasing power. That's a different story. The initial step will always be the same. Because my purchasing power is rising due to fall in the price level of given good, my budget line will still tilt to the right. My budget line will still tilt to the right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a given good or a normal good or any other good. My purchasing power is rising. That is why my budget line is tilting to the right. Everything clear? So once we are done with this stage, now you have to identify what will be the effect on given good by drawing a new equilibrium position on the new budget line, that is AC. Now we have to prove this relationship. Now the given good says that if the price level falls, your quantity demand is falling as well. Now we are operating at point X. So logically, if I want to show a decrease in my quantity demand for good X, I will draw a new equilibrium which is behind this quantity level of good X, right? So my new equilibrium will be somewhere like this. And this is my IC1, equilibrium E1. And this is my new equilibrium quantity X1 and X1. All right. This is my new equilibrium quantity X1 and X1. Now there's a positive relationship between price and quantity demand, which means that there will be an upward sloping demand curve, right? So this is my upward sloping demand curve like this. This is my initial quantity, and this is where it is intersecting with my demand curve. So this is my initial equilibrium position. This is my initial price level. All right. This was the initial price level. This is the new quantity. This is intersecting here. This means that this is my another equilibrium of E1 and my price level is falling from P to P1. So in this derivation below, you can clearly see for yourself that because my price level is falling from P to P1, my quantity demand for given good will fall as well. Everything clear? Very good. So this is how you draw the diagram of decrease in price level. Now, if I link it with increase in price level, it is very simple overall. The only thing that will change is the fatwa position. Other than that, everything will be same. Now, let's say I am drawing a diagram of increase in price, and we are talking about normal demand curve, which says that if the price level is rising, the quantity demand for that good will fall, proving a negative relationship. This is normal demand curve. Normal demand curve. Now, let's draw the fatwa first. Let's draw the fatwa first. Now, this is good Y, and this is good X. This is the price of good X, and quantity of good X. All right. Now, this is our initial budget line, that is AB. All right. And there should be an initial indifference curve in the center, that is IC. This is supposed to be my equilibrium E, and this is supposed to be my equilibrium position, where my quantity consumed is X. All right, X and X. Now, if there is an increase in price level, so regardless of the nature of good, it actually doesn't matter. Whenever there's an increase in price level, your purchasing power falls, your spending power falls, your real income falls, which will tilt your budget line from AB to AC, inwards like this, from AB to AC. This is your new budget line. And this is when you will draw a new indifference curve and new equilibrium to identify which kind of good you are talking about. All right. And on the right side, we are linking the case with Giffen good. Price level increases, and we're talking about Giffen good, which also states that the quantity demand will rise as well. All right. Now, let's talk about the normal good first. It states that if the price level is rising, demand for that good will fall, right? So this means that your new equilibrium position, according to this concept, your new equilibrium position should be behind this X. It should be behind this X. Why? Because we have to prove a decrease in quantity demand for good X. This is your new IC, IC1, equilibrium E1, and this is your new equilibrium position, X1 and X1. Proving a negative relationship between price and quantity demand, your demand curve is like this. It is downward sloping like this. This was your first equilibrium. This was your first equilibrium price. All right. This is your new equilibrium position, and this is the new equilibrium price. That's it. We are done with the diagram. Everything clear for normal good? Everything clear for normal good? Now, if we talk about Giffen good, for Giffen good, we have to show an increase in quantity. Right? Now, if I am operating at point X, this means that my new equilibrium should be away from this X to show an increase in quantity of good X. So my new equilibrium will be somewhere like this. This is my IC1, equilibrium E1, and new quantity X1 and X1. All right. Now, proving a positive relationship between price and demand like this. This is your initial equilibrium position where the initial price level is P. All right. This is your new equilibrium position where the new price level is P1. So as there is an increase in price level, your equilibrium quantity is rising as well. Everything clear? Everything clear? So we are done with price consumption curve.